Welcome back to Cowpark Bros. Jason and I are fresh off the segment. We discuss Elon Musk having his Whole Foods moment. Um, Twitter would Twitter might be in pretty good hands in Elon Musk's hands. I always wonder why people overreact when a new person's taking over. I was like, unless they say outright, hey, everybody gonna get fired. Just relax. All right, in this second segment, we're going to be talking about something, unfortunately, we know we either have been affected or we know someone that's been affected, and domestic violence. And news came out last week that Major League Baseball was going to suspend Trevor Bauer, pitcher, for the equivalent of 2 years for domestic violence allegations. And the significance of this, of course, is we are not that far removed, Jason, from the Ray Rice incident, where when it first occurred, Ray Rice only got 2 games, and then the video came out, and that's when the National Football League realized, oh shit, we can't just let this guy have 2 games, even though they would have done it had the video not appeared, had the video not been leaked. And so the fact that a major sports league has taken these allegations. I mean, at this point, there's more than allegations. Shit, MLB probably has as much surveillance muscle as the National Football League at this point. It's got to be more than allegations if they're saying your ass ain't gonna be playing for 2 years. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, exactly. So back in February is when I believe it was determined in a criminal court that the judge decided we're not going to convict or whatnot or take the trial Trevor Bauer based off the evidence, not you know not being beyond a reasonable doubt of his guilt. So that was dropped. So at that point, it was on MLB to decide, hey, are we going to suspend him, or are we going to go do anything, or are we going to let his leave of absence that he's had for these last months or so to stand his suspension, because he hasn't pitched since June of last year, and he's been on the shelf since then. So even if I thought that he was going to get suspended, maybe that time he spent away would count towards that. Well, no, that 324 games didn't start till last Friday. So he basically not going to be pitching until April-ish 2024. And under the domestic abuse policy, domestic violence policy under by MLB, the longest anybody had been suspended under that was only for 1 year, 162 games. The shortest was 15. So that goes and tells you how strongly Manfred and the MLB felt about the things that, I guess I have to say, allegedly Trevor Bauer did. Now, I also will say that I searched for hours trying to find any indication that there was some type of, I shouldn't say that, any kind of indication about what information was used by Manfred and MLB to decide to go ahead and do this. Now, of course, per agreement by the league and MLB PA, they couldn't make that public in regards to what information was used to make that decision. But to people's knowledge, there is no video evidence of what happened. There's no Ray Rice stuff when it comes to that video. So again, basically MLB, despite again Bauer not being convicted or even tried or whatever in a criminal court, MLB's Manfred said, you know what? I don't care about the criminal situation. I don't care there's no video. I don't care about the legalese stuff. Basically, he said, I think you did this, essentially. And because of what I think you did was so heinous, here's these 2 years. Peace out. See you then. Now, obviously, Trevor Bauer is going to appeal this, which he still can't play during the appeal. And we'll see what happens. Maybe the fact that it wasn't a criminal trial at all, or he wasn't convicted, maybe that might work in his favor to get it reduced. We'll see. But again, that's going to depend on what information the MLB has to make this decision. Again, given the lack of criminal case and no video evidence to anybody is aware of. Those are my initial thoughts. I mean, as a baseball fan myself, and I have to imagine any other baseball fan will feel the same way. Physically, when you saw that number 324 games, your jaw had to drop a little bit. Verbally, I'm sure most people like me said, damn. And of course, you read every article about it, realizing, doing the math in your head, that's 2 years. So I guess in his case, 2+ years, technically, again, given he hasn't pitched or anything since June. So basically, might as well make it almost 3. Um, and the fact of the matter is, he just signed a contract with the Dodgers right before, I believe, the season started, a 3-year contract. So he almost basically isn't going to play a lick of that, because by the time he's suspended, contract could be up, and the Dodgers don't technically have to pay him. So those are my initial thoughts, man. It's definitely, and I'll let you jump in real quick, but you mentioned Ray Rice. This is cool in a way. Again, I don't know if Trevor Bauer is guilty of any of this stuff, but I will say, in a way, kudos to MLB for actually saying you care about the domestic abuse policy and actually putting it into action. Whether it gets reduced or not is what it is, because the NFL and other leagues, which I'm definitely going to go into, may talk the talk, but they don't seem to walk the walk.
When you say they don't talk the talk, they talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. Can you give me an example?
Well, you just mentioned Ray Rice. So initially, he only got suspended for 2 games, right? And it wasn't until the video came out that he wound up getting suspended for only 6, by the way, only 6 games, which isn't even half the season, would be 16 or 17 games. We know other situations, which again, I'll go into detail a little later, that people got suspended for longer games for less reason. Didn't, like, for example, Calvin Ridley, didn't he get suspended for 10 games for gambling? Or what? It might have been more than that. Whatever he was doing, he got suspended for more than that.
But still, like, I don't want to compare gambling and domestic.
That's my whole point. That's my whole point. It's not playing the Olympics like you want to play. There's a huge difference in domestic violence, which most people would perceive that to be worse than him gambling. But yet he got more games than Ray Rice. And again, other examples as well. Greg Hardy originally suspended for 10 games, appealed it, got reduced to 4 or whatever it was. So, but that's what I'm referring to. And there's other examples in other leagues as well. But that's why I'm saying that at least the MLB, whether they're overstepping or not, at least walking the walk, and not just talking the talk. They're not just saying they care, not really doing anything about it. Now this is the second time they suspended for somebody for at least 1 season. This guy got 2. So kudos to them for that, for at least walking the walk.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned the $102 million contract he had, past tense, because
he still has as of right now, he still has it. The Dodgers can still have to pay him if they want to. If they want to.
Well, that's one hell of an optics problem.
Well, I mean, and I should say after the fact, because they can't, while he's suspended, they can't pay him while he's suspended. So that's after the fact. If they want to work something out, that's up to them. But while he's suspended, they can't pay him.
Right. I mean, I appreciate the factual nuance of that, Jason, but why the hell would you want to do that? if why the hell would you want to do that? Knowing the optics if you do it.
Hey, I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying that if they want to work out something with him after the fact, that's up to them. They could. I agree with you. May not be a good look for them or any team potentially that signs him after the suspension is over. But that's still up to the team if they want to do it. Somebody brought in Michael Vick afterwards. Didn't get they call heat for it, but they still did it. So, and I got to look up how old Trevor Bauer is. But in 2 years, I'm thinking he'll still be young enough to pitch if he wants. So somebody can still sign him. Ray Rice didn't have that luxury. Nobody wanted him. But again, that video evidence of him was pretty damning, obviously. Trevor Bauer can rest on his laurels and say, I wasn't convicted of anything. And somebody may go ahead and sign him. Again, it's 30 teams. All it takes is 1, right? And again, not saying that somebody should sign him, folks. So don't go out there saying Jason said somebody should sign him. No, I said somebody could if they wanted to, after the suspension's over.
I mean, now I'm gonna pull a you on you. Who's to say that this suspension has an end date.
Well, it does. 324 as of right now is 2 seasons.
Right. But just like you said, hey, they effectively had him on desk duty, pretty much
Mm-hmm.
to like an interim. You can't play status. What's to prevent the commissioner from effectively in 2 years from now? And this is further proof that we're just overthinking this. But what's to say that Rob Manfred and company decide actually it's a permanent ban?
Well, I have to know what's arbitrated because since you already came out with 2 years, provided no other information comes out, which obviously we don't know, but based off the current information, I'd have to say that if Rob Manfred tries that, Trevor Bauer definitely would appeal it, and he'd probably win. And honestly, we don't know what's going to happen with his first appeal because that could get reduced too. We don't know. But I think the more likely scenario, as opposed to getting an additional suspension, is what we talked about. Some teams, well, not some team, but teams deciding not to sign him at all. And I think that's really going to be the question two. Is there one is the appeal going to is the suspension going to get reduced after the appeal? And two, if not, or either if it is or isn't, once he's allowed to come back, is he still going to be able to get signed, or is he still going to be signed by a team in the major leagues? Again, 30 teams only takes one. And I'll say this: if it's believed that Trevor Bauer still has the talent to help a team, and somebody may take a look at him to find out. Taking 2 years off as a pitcher typically is not a good thing. But that's the difference. Another difference with other situations. Like we already said, what is the value you bring to a team over the detriment you might bring as well? Talked about Michael Vick. Yeah, obviously all the people hated him because of the dogfight and stuff. And it was going to be a risk for any team to pick him up after that, which more than one team did, but particularly the Eagles, because they felt the value he could bring to them on the field was worth all the hate they would get from all the protests and stuff like that. So it could be the same thing. Now I don't know how much heat Trevor Bauer is going to get from this, because again, wasn't guilty in the court of law. So I don't know. But yeah, so that is what it is. We'll see what happens with the appeal, which I think is the first step. There's no news about when the appeal is going to happen. Multiple articles said it's already been filed. And I will say, people, as you probably imagine, when the appeal process happens, it will be heard by an arbitrator. That's again, those who know arbitrator, somebody who's separate from Trevor Bauer, no relation to him, and no relation and correlationship with Manfred and MLB. It's somebody totally neutral, hear both sides, and go from there. Which, again, personally, without knowing what information, when I can't imagine what additional information that MLB would have over the courts. But personally, I have a strong suspicion that his 2-year suspension is going to get reduced. I just have a strong suspicion. Because I know it's not a criminal case, but I have to imagine that the MLB is going to have to show just cause as to why your longest suspension under this program was 1 year before. What did Trevor Bauer do? And what information do you have to say, okay, we're going to make your suspension a year longer than that guy? And I just have a feeling they're not going to be able to justify that, and it's going to get reduced. Just my hunch. Again, not advocating for anything to happen, folks, so don't go there. I'm just stating my hunch and opinion based off how, unfortunately, suspensions usually go. I have to imagine more times than not they get reduced. So,
right. But how many suspensions have been reduced to just to domestic violence? That's what I'm saying. Like, we're talking. How many suspensions have been proposed for in the course of MLB having this policy, and how many of them have been reduced so far?
I can look that up. But one thing I can, again, different sport.
You know that right now.
What's that?
I don't expect you to know that right now, because I sure as hell don't.
Well, okay, that's fine. That's fine. I agree with you. But I can give you one example right now that I already gave from a different sport. Greg Hardy.
No, I'm talking about Major League Baseball specifically.
Well, okay. Well, like I just said, I don't have it off the top of my head right now. I can easily look it up before the segment's over or before the show's over. But what I'm telling you is there are examples of it, regardless of sport, because in a way, the sport really doesn't matter. Just keep in mind, this is heard by an arbitrator, somebody who doesn't, in theory, doesn't really have a horse in the race when it comes to deciding one way or another. Again, theory, I know, but just saying that it can be reduced. Not saying it will or it won't. I'm just saying I have a hunch.
Yeah, I'm saying maybe with the if Greg Hardy is the is the poster child, like maybe we shouldn't be doing that.
Shouldn't be doing what?
Shouldn't be reducing suspensions.
Well, again, I don't recall the fact pattern of that about why it might have gone one way or the other. I can guess why I got 10 games initially. I mean, because again, that's NFL trying to walk the walk or whatever. But just saying it can be reduced. And go ahead and jump into what you guys say because I'm definitely gonna look that up.
No, I was just gonna say, to your point, Jason, this really isn't about the particular sport, and it's really not about. I mean, it is about Trevor Bauer because he's the one where they have not just one allegation of a woman indicating domestic violence; it's at least two other incidents in addition to this one. And so I think that might play into how they landed at this number 324 in terms of games missed. Um, but I think that's why I bring up the Ray Rice situation because we're talking about high profile players, and we're talking about the fact that our culture has a domestic violence issue in the first place. Sports is simply just a microscope, a microcosm, if you will, of our everyday culture anyway. And so issues like this in major league sports aren't really about the major leagues. It's about people and humanity and relationships, and the fallout from them anyway. And that's why I found it compelling, is because number one, obviously something happened with Trevor Bauer, and potentially one or more women, regarding domestic violence issue. And I feel like that's something worth discussing because it's like, okay, something had to have happened. Some sort of event had to have happened for for Rob Manfred to take this on. Nobody, no commissioner in their right mind running a sports league wants to come off as soft on domestic violence. That's what it boils down to for me.
So as I'm looking this up, I actually thought of something that I read earlier. So the answer to your question, how many MLB suspensions for domestic violence have been reduced? That will be none, because Trevor Bauer is actually the first one of all. There's been 16 guys, including Bauer, to be suspended under the MLB's domestic violence policy. None of the other 15 guys before him appealed their suspension. So to answer your question, none, because nobody's tried to.
Right.
I do want to point out, technically, the longest suspension is actually 100 games. So yes, none of them have tried. I'm sure they have various reasons why they didn't. Probably because those guys a lot of them are probably found guilty. But again, I don't blame Bauer at all for looking to appeal this because it's 2 years. I would probably do the same thing in his situation. So, and we'll see what happens. And again, so yeah, just a hunch that's probably gonna get reduced. Not saying it will or won't. If it doesn't, I'll be color me surprised. And it is what it is.
I'm curious if there will be any more information that comes out as a result of the arbitration.
I almost want to say no. I mean, of course, things can get leaked, of course. But based on everything I've been reading, so much stuff has been what's the word? Agreed upon between the MLBPA and the players union when it comes to what stuff can or can't happen and released to the public in these situations. So short of something leaking when it's not supposed to, I don't think we're going to hear anything because that's what both sides agreed upon, and that's why Manfred can't share any of the information that they used to determine the suspension for Bauer. I mean, the only statement that Manfred made was the league investigation has concluded, and that determined that Bauer's conduct violated the policy and warranted a suspension. That's basically not really paraphrasing. It's a lot of quoting. That's all he really said. That's all he could say. Trust me, I was digging around to find anything that might indicate, hey, what do they know? The only thing I found was that quote, and basically a lot of people saying that there was no video evidence, which I didn't think there was anyway. So again, going back to what I was saying before, they're basing it off of probably the same stuff that was, mentioned in court, and Manfred MLB is thinking, hey, you did this, here's your suspension. Now, why they don't believe Trevor Bauer, hey, that's not, hey, whatever, I don't know. But they don't, and that's why they suspended him. So
Yeah. Yeah, there might be something to that whole believe women thing, especially when there's at least 3 of them saying you did some shit.
So there is 3. I've only seen articles about 1, so there's 3. Is that what you're saying, Terrence?
That is what I'm saying.
Okay.
That was literally what I was saying. I was like, fam, there is more than one woman indicating this.
Okay, that's fine. But every article is only talking about the 1, and that's fine. There's 2 more. Maybe that's part of the problem too. So there you go.
So, but yeah, it's a new day in American sports, and yeah, we should watch with great interest. All right. That wraps up the segment regarding the Trevor Bauer suspension. Coming up next, we're going to be talking about the retirement of NCAA captain Mark Emmert. Coming up next on Cal Park Bros.